Discover the amazing secret to transforming the unexpected odor in seniors, exposed by 99%. Emily stood in the bustling corridor of Maple Grove Care Facility, the scent of antiseptic mingling with the unmistakable odor that clung to several elderly residents. A sad, persistent reminder of their frailty. She had dedicated her life to caring for the vulnerable, ensuring their comfort and dignity, yet recently had faced a tarnish on her heart. The judgments, whispers, and furtive glances from visitors and even some staff cut deeper than any physical ailment she encountered. How could she protect her beloved patients from such unwarranted scorn? They were more than statistics and unfounded stigmas. They were stories, laughter, and love. But the world outside didn't see it that way. Each time Mr. Jenkins shuffled past her, his knowing smile hidden beneath a veil of age, a knot tightened in her chest. With the wisdom of a retired scientist, he often shared insights on the biological realities of aging that Emily had learned to appreciate. Yet the more she listened, the more she became aware of the societal rift that distanced them from basic humanity. The awful scents weren't from neglect, but rather the inherent processes of their aging bodies, something no amount of soap could wash away. As she faced the reality of the judgments against them, a wave of anger and protectiveness surged within her. How can I face my patients, knowing they're labeled because of something beyond their control? Each morning's shift reminded her of the weight she bore alone. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Armed with newfound knowledge, Emily dove into research with Mr. Jenkins, navigating the complexities between theory and compassion. They hoped to meld science with advocacy, creating a presentation that celebrated the dignity of aging. But when she finally approached her superiors, spurred by a fire to enact change, their cold reception drove daggers of doubt into her resolve. They were more focused on maintaining the facility's polished image than on the humanity of its residents. Each dismissive glance from her colleagues echoed the very stigma she fought against. Her hands trembled, not from uncertainty of her research, but from fear of what staying silent could mean for her cherished patients. Behind closed doors, a battle raged within her. Would speaking out for them cost her career? What if the backlash pushed her away, far from the very people she had sworn to protect? Yet, the thought of walking away, of allowing her patients to suffer the cruelties of misunderstanding, felt like a deep betrayal. Standing in front of the board of directors, heart racing and voice wavering, Emily gazed at the blank faces before her. This wasn't about an odor. It was a plea for respect, dignity, and recognition of the issues surrounding aging. As she invited them into her world, she felt the tensions rise around her. What if this moment shattered everything she lived for? At that instant it became clear she could slip into resignation, or she could ignite change for her residents, a choice that would come with its own perilous cost. She would fight for the souls she cherished, and in that resolve, an ember of hope flickered. Could her passion become a catalyst for transformation? The boardroom started to feel like a battleground, with Emily standing amid a furious storm, but the outcome remained uncertain. The air in the boardroom felt charged with an electric tension, amplifying Emily's anxiety. As she began to present her findings, her voice trembled with a mixture of vulnerability and defiance. Each statistic she shared was a reminder of the humanity behind the numbers, those who had once loved, laughed, and lived vibrant lives. She could almost see Mr. Jenkins nodding in encouragement, his eyes sparkling with the hope of change. But the cold expressions of the board crumpled her resolve. She noticed a few members shift in their seats, clearly more concerned with maintaining their reputation than addressing the issues she presented. Emily pushed forward, her heart pounding with determination as she outlined the transformative power of understanding and compassion in care. She drew upon Mr. Jenkins' research, illustrating how awareness could alter perceptions and lead to innovative practices, promising a brighter future for their residents. Yet, every rebuttal from the board felt like a blow. "We can't afford to change our whole approach based on a few anecdotes," one director scoffed, while another added, "These are ordinary realities of aging that we must accept." Doubt crept into Emily's mind. What if the fight she started was futile? What if she was just one voice against a wall of indifference? Determined not to falter, she shifted her approach. Instead of presenting merely information, she began to share stories from her daily interactions, tales of kindness from the residents, of unshakable spirits reluctant to give in to the stereotypes that overshadowed them. As she recounted the times Mrs. Thompson had brightened a gloomy afternoon with her stories of young love, or how Mr. Jenkins had taught her about resilience through the lens of science, she could feel their power. The board's attention began to waver, some shifting ever so slightly as they seemed to contemplate the implications of these personal narratives. But then came the critical question, delivered with a polished veneer by the board chair. "Emily, if we invest resources into this initiative, what guarantee do we have it will yield our desired image? Our primary focus should remain on what is financially viable." That statement hung in the air, heavy with meaning. In that moment, Emily felt the weight of her mission crash into stark reality. This fight wasn't just about the residents, it was about business, about optics, and how an organization viewed aging. What was a great cause to her felt trivial to them, and as doubts surged within her, she realized she had to shift her strategy from appeal to confrontation. With a newfound clarity, she looked the chair directly in the eye and asked, "Is it viable to turn our backs on those who have given everything to this world? What legacy do we want to leave behind?" For the first time in the meeting, silence settled, and the tension was palpable. Emily's heart hammered in her chest, and as her words hung in the air, she felt a flicker of hope amid the despair. Maybe, just maybe, this was the awakening she needed, not just for the residents of Maple Grove, but for herself. She had to endure the discomfort of questioning entrenched beliefs. Would her courage lead to support or further isolation? The stakes had risen dramatically. Crisis often births opportunity, and within the doubts, a plan began to form in her mind. There was support waiting for her outside these walls, people who understood her mission, advocacy groups, allies in nursing education, and family members desperate for change. As the meeting adjourned, the board members whispered among themselves, oblivious to the underlying storm of conviction that had begun to churn within Emily. The hour spent debating had not broken her. Instead, she emerged more steadfast than ever. With resolved determination, she exited the conference room, the corridor outside blurred by her racing thoughts. She needed a strategy, a way to gather support beyond these walls. There was a growing fire within her, a relentless push against stagnation, a vision that might not be welcomed here but one that demanded to be seen. Emily took a deep breath, envisioning what she could do next. The next steps had to be bold. She would gather evidence, create alliances, and perhaps even confront those willing to stand with her. The reality dawned. It was now time to step into the unknown and face the challenge head-on. And as she took out her phone to connect with her network, a single thought echoed in her mind. The time had come to face the real battle for dignity in aging. Would she muster the courage to lead a revolution in care, one that began with her own conviction? Emily stepped out of the boardroom, her heart still racing with the adrenaline of confrontation. The corridor felt unusually quiet, an eerie contrast to the storm of thoughts swirling in her mind. She needed to channel this urgency into a concrete strategy that transcended the indifference she had faced. The moment she reached her office, she was flooded with ideas. She quickly grabbed her laptop, fingers poised to synthesize her observations and insights into a compelling proposal. This document would need to encapsulate not just the emotional appeal, but also a robust framework for implementation. She recalled the faces of the residents, and suddenly, every data point felt critical, not just as statistics, but as a call to action. While she typed, she wrestled with her resolve. The board had dismissed her experience as something superficial, yet it was that very human connection that could drive transformative change. She had seen things they hadn't. She had felt the spunk and humor in every resident who defied the stereotypical views of aging. How could they dismiss that? The keyboard clacked under her fingertips as she pulled together testimonials and research. She indexed stories highlighting the resilience of the elderly, detailing specific moments when they exhibited fierce independence or an inspiring optimism. Perhaps if she framed her proposal not as an overhaul, but as a pilot program, it would lower the perceived risk in the board's eyes. Gradually, the outline of a detailed plan emerged, one that would blend her findings with practical applications. With newfound clarity, Emily realized the power of collaboration. She called her contacts from advocacy groups, family members, and even medical professionals she had met during her training. In increasingly fervent conversations, she shared her vision. The enthusiasm was infectious, and with every call, her confidence deepened. All we need is one solid ally in management to champion the cause, she reasoned aloud during one call. If we present them with well-documented evidence showing both the financial and moral imperatives for change, maybe we can sway the board. As she mined her network for potential allies, she began drafting targeted emails that would resonate with individual board members. Each note was penned carefully, ensuring she highlighted not just performance metrics, but personal stories that might resonate with their values or concerns. The more she strategized, the more she discovered her own capabilities: communication, resource mobilization, and advocacy. Each realization lifted her spirit. However, a nagging sensation loomed in the background of these productive moments: the fear of failure. What if no one responded to her outreach? What if the board doubled down on the status quo? As she tried to push these thoughts aside, an unsettling realization took shape. The fight for change was not merely about swimming upstream against institutional inertia, but also about grappling with her own hesitancy. She questioned whether she could summon the courage in the crunch moments when it truly mattered. As she compiled her emails and proposals, Emily paused to reflect. She understood that facing her fears was just as vital as convincing the board. There was a paradox in trying to inspire change when battling her internal demons. Summoning her courage, she hit send on the first email, then another and another. Each action felt like chipping away at barriers, not just ones held by those in the boardroom, but also the ones within herself. The afternoon wore on, and Emily shifted her focus to outlining her approach for presenting the pilot program. She envisioned what her pitch would look like, but a lingering doubt resurfaced. How could she ever expect these powerful individuals to change if she didn't first change herself? With that thought echoing in her mind, Emily made a compelling decision. She would request one-on-one meetings with key directors, developing relationships that could potentially allow her voice to penetrate their defenses. She would literally step beyond the boundaries of the boardroom and forge connections with them as individuals. The realization ignited her spirit anew. She was no longer just implementing a program. She was stepping fully into her role as a leader. But that leap into the unknown held a heavy weight. How would they respond? Would she find that alliance, or would she be met with resistance? As Emily closed her laptop, a firm resolve settled within her. She would confront not just the institutional barriers, but also her own fears, igniting a deeper strength she had yet to explore. The path forward would not be easy, but it was time to embrace the transformative journey she had set upon. And as she prepared to reach out, she couldn't shake the thought that the real challenge was not only winning over hearts in the boardroom, but also convincing herself of her worthiness to lead this crucial cause. Would she have the tenacity to rewrite not just policies, but perceptions, both hers and theirs? The next morning, Emily awoke with a sense of purpose that almost transformed her anxiety into fire. The dawn light filtered through her window, illuminating her small office nook as she gathered her thoughts for the day ahead. Today would mark a shift. She was no longer just a voice behind a desk. She would be taking tangible steps forward. The air was thick with ambition as she prepared for her first meeting. She spent the morning refining her proposal, ensuring that she could articulate her vision clearly and confidently. Each point was met with the mindfulness of someone aware that every word carried the weight of her aspirations. Would they see the value in what she was advocating? Emily's first meeting was with a seasoned director who had always been somewhat skeptical of change. As she entered the office, she could see the carefully curated decor, framed awards and commendations that seemingly whispered of a legacy he was keen to uphold. It struck her. This man had built a career around stability, an adversary to her desire for transformation. Taking a deep breath, she initiated the dialogue, highlighting the potential impacts of her pilot program. As she conveyed the stories she had gathered, she watched his expression carefully. Occasionally, she caught a flicker of interest in his eyes, a glint that suggested he was not entirely closed off. Yet, every time she made a bold suggestion, his brow would furrow, signaling resistance. "What about the financial impact?" he asked, each word delivered with clinical precision. Emily felt her stomach tighten as she responded, detailing how the program could reduce long-term care costs by promoting independence among residents. She began to realize that her meticulously crafted points needed a personal touch, a layer of vulnerability. "I truly believe that empowering our seniors isn't merely a program, it's an acknowledgement of their dignity. When we empower them, we not only benefit their lives, but we also enrich the community as a whole," she said, her voice steady, yet filled with unguarded desire for change. For a moment, silence enveloped the room. The director leaned back, assessing her. "You have passion, Emily, but passion alone is not enough," he replied with a hint of challenge in his tone. Each word hung in the air like an unanswered question. The encounter became a crucible, causing her to confront her own doubts. Had her enthusiasm painted her as naive? Would she be viewed merely as an inexperienced idealist? Yet she understood the need to push beyond superficial engagement and genuinely connect with the board members. The impersonal office decor began to feel more like a barrier than a backdrop. Emily left the meeting attributing the tension within her to what was at stake. The drive for a positive outcome jostled against her fear of rejection, creating an electric charge. She had intended to merely inform. Instead, she needed to inspire. The bland bureaucratic dialogues were not enough. She must resonate with their emotional cores. Her next meeting went similarly, each director a new obstacle shrouded in skepticism. She tried different approaches, playing with the narratives of her proposal, attempting to align her experiences more closely with their values. It was in these moments that Emily tapped into her innate ability to empathize. She realized that presenting herself authentically not only humanized the data, but also portrayed her genuine intent. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Emily found herself returning to her office fatigued but resolute. The day had pressed her into new dimensions of herself. She recognized she needed greater depth than mere data. She was on a journey to redefine not just the program, but her own identity as a leader. What emerged was a dual focus, developing her proposal while also cultivating her resolve and understanding of leadership dynamics. The discomfort she felt was growth. The resistance she encountered was a chance to reflect on her own core beliefs. Then it struck her. To truly affect change, she'd need to evolve, challenging her own assumptions even more. The next meeting wouldn't just be about presenting her pilot program. It would be about embodying a vision of care that mattered deeply to herself and the residents. Suddenly, the door to her office creaked open, snapping her from her reverie. It was another director, his brows knotted, an uncharacteristic urgency in his expression. "Emily, we need to talk, and I think it's about your proposal." In that moment, anticipation electrified the air. Would this be the breakthrough she had been so diligently seeking, or another hurdle in disguise? Emily faced the director, her heart racing as possibilities flooded her mind. The urgency in his eyes seemed to promise either opportunity or calamity. She straightened her posture, readying herself for whatever revelation he was about to impart. "Sit down, Emily," he said, taking a deep breath as he gestured toward the chair opposite his. The gravity of his tone sent a shiver down her spine. "What about my proposal?" she asked, trying to maintain an even tone despite the whirlwind inside her. The director hesitated, the silence stretching between them like an unexplored chasm. "I've been reflecting on our discussions, and it dawned on me that you're not just presenting a program, but advocating for a shift in our organizational ethos." Her pulse quickened at his words. He was acknowledging more than just her proposal. He was recognizing her vision, yet doubt gnawed at her. Was he about to reveal shortcomings in her approach instead? "Change in philosophy isn't easy," he continued cautiously. "Especially here. You're dealing not only with numbers, but with people and their perceptions. This is a deeply rooted establishment that prides itself on tradition. Any significant change is bound to meet with resistance. Have you considered how to effectively measure the impact of this initiative?" "Yes, I have some initial ideas," she replied, a certainty creeping into her voice. "For example, we could track resident satisfaction and post-intervention independence metrics." He frowned slightly, not fully appeased. "Metrics will matter, but they need to resonate. The hardest part will be winning trust. You need more than supportive data. You need champions within the director's circle, those who can help translate your vision into the culture." Emily blinked, absorbing his feedback. The foundational shift she pursued required allies, influencers who could weave her narrative into the very fabric of their organizational story. This was a revelation. Her fight was not solitary. It implicated a network of shared beliefs. "Do you know what we call those champions?" he asked, leaning forward slightly, his gaze piercing through her hesitation. "Leaders. You need to be a leader ready to galvanize others around your vision." A shudder of realization washed over her. Transformational leadership was not simply her newfound role, it was a personal duty. She would have to confront her own fears head-on, stepping away from her comfort zone and becoming the catalyst for change. "Right," she stammered, her mind racing with the implications. "But how do I gain their trust?" "Start by being authentic and vulnerable. Share your motivations and stories. They will remember the person behind the data." "Empathy, Emily, empathy," he elaborated, his voice gaining fervor. "Your compassion can be the bridge between skepticism and acceptance." The weight of his words hung heavily in the air, fueling her conviction. She'd always believed in empathy, yet weaving it into her professional persona felt like a revelation. It was more than a tactic. It was her essence. As their conversation wound down, the director gave her a nod of encouragement. "You have the potential to lead this change, Emily. The path won't be linear, and you will face setbacks, but every interaction is a chance to redefine who you are within this organization. Just remember, the real work begins when you embrace the leader in you." With a renewed sense of direction, she left the meeting invigorated. His words echoed in her mind: passion, authenticity, empathy, and the necessity to build a coalition. But could she actually shed her old identity and embody the change she wanted to be? Uneasiness churned in her stomach. That night, she found herself looking at the proposal once again, not just the details, but as a reflection of her entire journey so far. In less than a week, she'd shifted from presenting information to understanding the importance of relationship building. But with that realization came a new challenge: the temptation to overthink every step, to second-guess her instincts after encountering resistance. The door opened again, pulling her from her thoughts. This time, it was someone she hadn't expected, a board member known for being staunchly traditional. His expression bore a look of resolve, and a swirling mixture of dread and curiosity stirred within her. "I've been hearing some things about your proposal, Emily. We need to talk. It's important." The words hung in the air, leaving Emily's heart racing with a combination of hope and fear. What lay ahead? Would this be the key to unlocking further collaboration or yet another hurdle in her quest for transformation? Emily felt the weight of the board member's gaze as he entered the room. Her heart raced, a mix of anticipation and anxiety brewing within her. The silence that hovered seemed to echo her own doubts. She watched him take a seat, scanning his face for cues, but the man remained inscrutable. "Thank you for seeing me on short notice," he began. His tone was neutral, professional, but Emily sensed a ripple of tension beneath the surface. "There's been a bit of discussion about your proposal, and I want to understand your vision better." She nodded, grappling with the shift in her role. This was a chance not just to defend her ideas, but to assert herself as a leader. "I'd be happy to elaborate," she said, setting her thoughts in motion. "The core of my proposal is about changing how we approach senior care. I believe we need to focus on enhancing the quality of life through personalized programs that can lead to better outcomes." He leaned back, fingers steepled thoughtfully. "Quality of life, yes. We like to think we achieve that already. But there are concerns. You're suggesting a shift in how we've always done things. People are set in their ways here." The skepticism in his voice triggered a stronger determination within her. "Absolutely, but that's precisely why change is necessary. We must adapt to the evolving needs of our residents. The current methods may not be effective anymore." "Effective metrics are one thing, people's feelings are another," he interjected, his brow furrowing. "Those in power rely on tradition, and tradition can be a formidable opponent. If you don't handle this delicately, it could backfire." Her composure was shaking, but steadied by resolve. "I understand that resistance is a valid concern, yet we cannot let fear of the unknown hinder progress. I believe we can cultivate trust through transparency. Gathering qualitative feedback from staff and families will be essential, not just numbers." The man regarded her closely, clearly weighing her proposition. "That sounds idealistic. Have you thought about how to engage the leadership team deeply? They'll need to see the personal stakes, not just the data." Echoing the director's earlier words, a light bulb flickered in Emily's mind. "Yes, I plan on sharing not just metrics, but stories, real experiences from staff and residents. People relate to storytelling. It fosters empathy." He leaned forward, the air thick with intrigue. "That could be the angle that elicits tension, or admiration. You'll have to tread carefully." A realization dawned on her. The critical need for empathy wasn't merely a tool for her proposal, it was a catalyst for her own reinvention. Could she be the voice that humanized the cold data? "And if I fail?" she pondered aloud, the question slipping from her lips before she could roar it back. The very thought gripped her, as sharp as a dagger. "Failure is part of growth," he stated, surprising her with his candor. "But the appearance of failure can shake the foundation you're trying to build. You need to demonstrate resilience and maintain a strong presence." Determined to showcase that resilience, Emily took a deep breath. "Then I will frame this as an evolution, not a revolution. I must convince them that shifting perspectives is a prerequisite to achieving our collective goals." "Interesting perspective," he noted, nodding. "People respond to confidence, Emily. It all begins with how you present yourself. If you stand firm in your beliefs, others may also follow." But even with reassurances laced throughout the exchanges, she felt the undercurrent of doubt. The grip of uncertainty tightened around her thoughts. What if her newfound leadership path meant confronting long-held ideologies, facing people who were comfortable in their views? Was she ready to navigate that terrain? As their conversation wrapped up, Emily felt her pulse quickening with each realization. She had the opportunity not just to persuade the board member, but to reshape the very culture of their organization. Walking away, she was revitalized, yet unnerved. It wasn't just an uphill battle against tradition. It was an expedition across uncharted waters where her growth and their acceptance hung in the balance. But the final question echoed in her mind like a haunting refrain. Would she withstand the turbulence of those entrenched in the old ways or crumble under the pressure? The sincerity in the board member's eyes clashed against her uncertainty. She needed to discover her own radical change, and soon. The next meeting would be a tipping point, one that could either galvanize the effort or send her spiraling back into the shadows of doubt. Would her next step reveal a path forward, or would it ignite even more resistance? The day of the meeting arrived, and Emily stood in front of her bathroom mirror, the bright light highlighting her tense expression. Preparations had consumed her for the last few days, every statistic, anecdote, and counter-argument meticulously organized. She had crafted her proposal to resonate emotionally and logically, yet the stakes loomed larger than ever. As she straightened her blazer, her thoughts flitted back to the board members' parting words: confidence and resilience. She took a deep breath, attempting to anchor herself to those ideas. This meeting wasn't merely about data. It was about igniting transformation in a system resistant to change. Walking to the conference room, each step reverberated with her apprehension. Pushing open the door, she found the room buzzing with familiar faces, most sitting around the long table, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Some shifted in their seats, glancing at their phones, while others looked on expectantly. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice firm but carrying a tremor that she quickly masked. The momentary silence felt deafening, amplifying her heart's anxious rhythm. Today, I want to discuss a vision that goes beyond metrics. It's about enriching lives through compassionate care. A flicker of doubt crossed the table, but she pressed on. Pulling up slides with stories of real residents, she painted an almost cinematic picture, weaving details about their experiences that transcended raw data. As she spoke, she noted several nods, which drove a surge of warmth through her. Here, in the realm of narrative, she found her confidence solidifying. While numbers indicate progress, they fail to capture the nuances of human experience, she asserted, her tone more assertive now. Consider Mrs. Thompson, who yearns for connections, family visits dwindling as she acclimates to her new environment. What does our current model say to her? How do we redefine our approach to ensure she feels valued? She caught the attention of the board member who had challenged her previously. His eyes reflected a glimmer of intrigue. They were in a dance now, her words stirring discussions. As she shifted from individual stories to the broader mission, she described her vision not as a threat to tradition, but as an evolution that would enhance the organization's reputation. Less about leaving the past behind, and more about integrating the past with future aspirations. Yet, as the meeting progressed, she soon faced a barrage of questions. Concerns were raised about budget constraints, potential fallout from staff layoffs, and the tight timeline for implementation. Each point made her heartbeat quicken, but Emily felt the instinct to retreat tugging at her. Would submitting to the fear of confrontation diminish the promise she had set forth? "No plan is without its risks," she responded steadily. "However, the cost of inaction could be far greater than any price we might assign to innovation. This is not just about number, it's about legacy. Our residents deserve this commitment." Realizing she needed to reach deeper into her own well of determination, she recounted a particularly poignant interaction with a resident who had once been withdrawn but thrived under a compassionate new program initiated on a smaller scale. Stories of transformation lightened the atmosphere, and she could see the stiff postures soften incrementally. "Empathy isn't merely a strategy," she concluded. "It's a necessary foundation upon which trust is built. If we can show both staff and residents the benefits of these personalized programs through our shared success stories, we can all stand proud as pioneers of change." After her presentation, the discussions took on a tone of deliberation. Board members exchanged glances, weighing her proposal against the backdrop of their traditional views. Emily felt that familiar tension, a gnawing uncertainty rising again. But then, a surprising voice entered the fray. One of the more conservative board members leaned forward. "What you presented today speaks to more than just change. It's about our duty. If we fail to acknowledge our residents' emotional experiences, we quell our own humanity. It was a pivotal moment that produced murmurs of agreement, and Emily felt adrenaline course through her veins. She had struck a chord, but as the discussion turned towards logistics and implementation, Emily knew this was merely the beginning. The challenge remained to overcome underlying resistance, to move from ideas to action. Leaving the room, her mind raced with possibilities and doubts. Had she truly captivated them, or had they only entertained her for a fleeting moment? Amidst the swirling thoughts, one persistent question echoed louder than the rest. Would her ability to facilitate this transformation stand the test of scrutiny, or falter against the weight of their entrenched habits? The stakes were higher than they had ever been. Now, more than ever, she needed to prepare for the ensuing backlash that she sensed brewing. What awaited her next could either solidify her leadership or unravel her efforts entirely. The final piece of the puzzle loomed. How would she forge ahead when the resistance began to take shape? The days following the meeting felt surreal to Emily. She had won the initial battle, earning buy-in from parts of the board, but the lingering tension haunted her thoughts. Shadowy doubts hovered like storm clouds, waiting to unleash their fury. Each morning, she wrestled with the fear that the enthusiasm ignited during her presentation could be snuffed out in the face of practical realities. She threw herself into refining the proposal, her desk cluttered with revisions and feedback. Each word she typed felt like a declaration of her determination, yet inside, a small voice repeatedly questioned her competence. What if the enthusiasm faded? Her mind swirled with the potential collapse of her carefully woven plans. In long discussions with her assistant Maya, Emily shared her worries. "I feel like I'm trudging uphill," she admitted one evening, her fingers brushing through a stack of untouched reports. "What if they revert back to their old ways? Am I strong enough to change their minds permanently?" Maya leaned back in her chair, her expression contemplative. "Change is a journey, Emily. You've already sparked the conversation. Now you just need the right strategies to keep it alive." With renewed focus, Emily researched transformational leadership models, immersing herself in literature that explored how effective leaders navigated resistance to change. She noted essential qualities: communication, emotional intelligence, and community building. These principles resonated with her. They were the very things that drove her proposal. But knowing and doing were two different realms. She created a plan of engagement, setting up one-on-one discussions with nervous board members and organizing small workshops to bring key staff together. Each meeting became a stepping stone, her confidence building with every shared success story. Emily realized she must be proactive, steering conversations toward understanding and shared goals. Yet, with each new step forward, the stakes felt even higher. She sensed the apprehension brewing among some of the board members. Every critical glance during her updates made her feel as if she were balancing on a knife's edge. She needed to solidify support before they could sabotage her vision. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling board meeting where questions turned hostile, Emily sat in her office and stared blankly at her computer screen. Frustration twisted in her gut as she recalled dismissive comments regarding the funding for her initiatives. Her fingers grazed the pencil cup, and out of frustration, she knocked it over. The contents spilled across her desk, a significant metaphor for the disarray brewing inside her. Closing her eyes, she breathed deeply, summoning her resolve. In that moment, something sparked. A notion crystallized in her mind. She could turn these challenges into opportunities. Overcoming resistance would not come from mere persuasion and presentations. It required building alliances and fostering discussions grounded in mutual understanding. She needed advocates, not just followers. That evening, Emily picked up the phone and called a few of the skeptical board members directly. Instead of meticulously structured emails, she opted for genuine conversations. Her tone was open and sincere. "I noticed your concerns today," she began with one. "I value your perspective and want to understand how we can make this work together. With each interaction, she found that not only did it lessen her anxiety, it also opened doors she hadn't anticipated. Listening actively, she absorbed feedback and reframed it to align with her mission. As Emily navigated this uncharted territory, she realized that conflict could become a catalyst for her vision rather than an obstacle. Yet, the building tension hinted at deeper underlying conflicts within the organization. Resistance was not merely a product of budget concerns, but of fear. Fear of inadequacy in the face of change. As Emily continued to navigate these complex dynamics, a realization struck her with overwhelming clarity. The personal growth she was undergoing was as vital as the organizational transformation she championed. She had stepped into her role as a leader, evolving through every adversarial encounter, yet the hardest battles were still ahead. With her quest for understanding deeper conflicts igniting her purpose, Emily resolved to confront the internal fears that loomed almost entirely in the dark. As she prepared for her next meetings, a new question filled her with determination. How could she effectively dismantle those fears and reshape them into the powerful force of progress? The moment approached when she would have to face the core of the resistance, and she would need every ounce of strength to unravel it. Would she be able to transform the organization's fear into a shared vision of hope, or would she crumble under the weight of its legacy? Emily spent the next few days meticulously preparing for her upcoming interactions with the board. She combed through reports and feedback, mapping every vital concern and outlining constructive responses. Each objection she anticipated felt like a mountain she would need to scale, but the thought of unraveling fear into opportunity propelled her forward. Determined to adopt an open-minded approach, she sought the wisdom of mentors outside her organization. During a midweek lunch, she sat across from David, a former CEO known for his transformative leadership in the industry. His reputation for turning dysfunction into synergy was legendary. As they shared a meal, Emily voiced her struggles and aspirations. "It feels like I'm standing in front of a divided audience, and no matter how I present my vision, the underlying fears remain unaddressed. How do I bridge this gap?" David paused thoughtfully, then replied, "People often fear change because it disrupts their sense of control. Consider each person's perspective actively. You're not just changing ideas, you're reshaping their narratives." His words struck a chord deep within her. Shaping narratives, that was what she needed to do. Emily had focused on presenting facts and figures, believing they would magically erase doubt and insecurity. The realization hit hard. She needed to uncover the personal stories behind each board member's hesitance. Their reluctance stemmed from untold experiences and insecurities that had nothing to do with her proposal and everything to do with them. With this newfound clarity, Emily shifted her strategy. She drafted an invitation for a more informal gathering, promising a safe space for open dialogue, away from the formalities of board meetings. "Let's discuss how we can move forward together," she wrote, "by sharing personal stories that impact our decisions." The day of the gathering arrived, and Emily felt apprehensive about this departure from structure. The ambiance was lighter, and as board members trickled in, she greeted them warmly, hoping to draw out their stories rather than their defenses. Initially, the conversation was halting, with small talk filling the air. Emily gently nudged them toward sharing by opening up about her own fears and vulnerabilities. She spoke candidly about her early career missteps and how they shaped her perspective on leadership. Slowly, one by one, others began to share their own experiences. From fiscal crises to personal setbacks, the stories revealed a tapestry of human vulnerability intertwined with their professional lives. As they exchanged narratives, Emily sensed the collective encumbrance of fear dissipating. Each revelation was not just a connection. It was a brick removed from the wall of resistance, and she felt lighter with each shared struggle. In those moments, Emily recognized the importance of vulnerability in leadership, a lesson far deeper than any management book could provide. She learned that resilience wasn't merely about pushing past barriers. It was about creating an environment where collective insecurities could be acknowledged and transcended. However, even as connections blossomed, Emily could not ignore the still vocal skepticism among a few board members. Despite the openness, whispers of operational priorities and profit margins loomed large in certain corners. These were the individuals still entrenched in doubt, fearing that any deviation from their traditional paths might invite uncertainty. Later that evening, Emily returned home, exhausted but exhilarated. The gathering had felt like a turning point, yet it also illuminated the schism still present. How could she convert this palpable sense of camaraderie into a unified vision that would resonate with the reluctant skeptics? As she lay in bed, the question reverberated through her mind. The vital conversations had begun, but they had only scratched the surface of the deeper resistance. What strategy might coax those reluctant board members into embracing change, to confront their fears and be part of this evolving narrative? With determination ignited, Emily stared at the ceiling, brimming with ideas and strategies yet to unfold. The road ahead demanded boldness. She would have to confront the heart of the hesitants directly. But would the journey she embarked upon lead to acceptance or further division? It was a gamble she was now prepared to take, yet the outcome remained shrouded in uncertainty. Emily stood at the threshold of a new beginning, staring into the bustling hall of Maple Grove once again. She had faced the dissonance of resistance, weathered the storm of skepticism, and emerged not just as a voice for change, but as a leader capable of shifting the narrative within her organization. The boardroom that had once felt so daunting was now a place where her courage and determination had sown seeds of transformation. The air was different, charged with an optimism that had once felt like a distant dream. Before approaching the board one last time, she gathered her thoughts. This time, it was vital to address not just the program, but the very soul of the institution. Her experiences had taught her that behind every statistic and operational metric lay an intricate tapestry of human stories. She understood that members needed to feel a connection, a resonance that stemmed from shared motivations. She needed their hearts engaged, not just their minds. Standing before the board, she felt a palpable tension in the air. The faces that once looked at her with skepticism now held a glimmer of respect. This was the moment to leverage that respect into action. Emily cleared her throat, her voice steady, infused with newfound authority. Today, I'm not just here to discuss the pilot program or the data that supports it. I'm here to invite each of you to embrace a mission that transcends numbers. It's about building a legacy of dignity for our residents. As she spoke, Emily felt an inner calm replace the earlier anxiety. This was her purpose, not only presenting a program, but fostering a culture that valued empathy and connection. She shared stories of transformation, illustrating how the initial conversations had begun to unearth the essence of care that had been muted beneath layers of rigidity. This isn't merely about change. It's about revolutionizing how we perceive and engage with aging. Each of you is integral to this collective evolution. As she watched their expressions shift from indifference to contemplation, she saw a glimpse of what had been once out of reach, their hearts beginning to open up to the possibility of change. Yet, she also discerned lingering hesitations from a couple of board members. Their unwavering adherence to tradition surfaced, but Emily was determined. Embracing this movement doesn't mean abandoning our values. It means expanding our definition of success to encompass not just financial metrics, but the personal stories of triumph that underline every resident's experience. The discussions that ensued were more productive than any she had previously navigated. Questions arose, concerns voiced, but they were now tethered to deeper conversations about values and legacy. With every dialogue, Emily found that her persistent vulnerability and authenticity had forged connections previously thought unattainable. Finally, after an intense discussion, a board member stood and addressed the room. "Emily, you have ignited a spark that many of us didn't see before. The idea of transformation is daunting, but perhaps it's also necessary for us to thrive." The affirmation seemed to ripple through the group, emboldening them. With unity forming, the board reached a consensus to move forward with her proposal as a pilot program that would not only enhance resident care, but strategically position Maple Grove as a leader in compassionate aging. The decision represented not simply a mere acceptance of change, but an acknowledgement that each board member had embraced a more profound understanding of their roles. As she exited the meeting, Emily felt an overwhelming sense of closure and accomplishment. No longer did she bear the weight of isolation. She had built alliances and awakened a shared vision. Her journey had transformed her from a frightened caregiver into a resilient leader, illustrating what Eugene O'Neill said, "Courage is grace under pressure." The recognition and support she received validated her leadership growth and dedication to her patients. It reinforced that vulnerability, empathy, and relationships were foundational pillars of any effective organization. Emily had emerged not only as an advocate but also as an esteemed leader, commanding respect and attention. With each step toward the exit, her heart brimmed with pride. She had not only succeeded, but had proven to herself that strength resided in both her compassion and her determination to stand tall amid challenges. Her voice had become a powerful catalyst for change, echoing in every corner of Maple Grove's future. With renewed purpose and a clear vision ahead, Emily knew the journey was not merely about the transformation of an organization. It was an ongoing development of herself as a leader who dared to confront, inspire, and uplift. Now, in a moment of reflection, she recognized this journey was one worth sharing. It mattered deeply. And this affirmation beckoned to the audience. You need to subscribe now to experience more transformative stories that inspire hope and change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, ensuring that powerful narratives are never silenced. Comment your reactions and theories about the journey as your engagement fuels the fires of resilience. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see the power of personal transformation. Don't wait, even one more second. True fans of overcoming challenges understand that your support is crucial for spreading these impactful stories.